Hello, people, and welcome. Not only I'm low on dopamine today, but I'm also sick, right? But I found this interview that is currently live, so I'll be watching it and then I will upload it right after I get done with it. Let's see if I can get done with it. So it's between Tucker confronts Mike Huckabee on America's toxic relationship with Israel. Now, my background is that I am an Arab American, and also I'm from a Shia background, right? So let's see what's my perspective on this. Let's see if this goes anywhere. All right, let's get right into it.
For that. In general, I don't think people should be going immediately to motive, calling each other Nazis or anti-Semites. I said I hate the Christian Zionists. I lost control of myself. Of course, I don't. I've apologized for that. I have problems with my anger, and so I just want to apologize to you since you are a Christian Zionist.
You and I have known each other for over 30 years.
Over 30 years. That is totally true.
Back when you were in Little Rock. So
yes.
You know,
the newspaper.
it's why I wanted us to have a conversation, talk to each other and not about each other. And I appreciate very much your coming here to.
Of course, and I'm only saying a couple hours, unfortunately, because I kind of shoehorned this in, but I hope that I will be back soon, and I hope that I can come back soon, because I actually like, despite what you may hear, I actually like the country. I've been here a lot, and there are a lot of things I love about it, and I want to talk to people in it for like a week.
Good.
And get a better sense of it. So I want to ask you, everyone I've talked to in preparation for this has said the same thing. Jonathan Pollard?
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw the name to you and have you explain.
No, I'm glad you asked. You know,
Of course.
Interestingly, there's been a lot of things about it. You're the first person who has asked me about it, which I find amazing. So I'm glad you did.
Really?
Yeah, the very first
Good.
person.
Well, it's better.
So far, it seems really diplomatic. And one thing that I have not mentioned yet. So apparently, he got arrested either before or after. I think it was after he did this interview. So he literally got arrested after doing this interview. So far, he's been so diplomatic, but we'll see how it exactly goes.
To hear it.
Sure. I met Jonathan Pollard 2 times. Once I was making a speech in Jerusalem. This has been a few years ago. His wife was still alive at the time, and he was there. And someone introduced me to him and his wife. I said hello to them. That was it. Hi. Nice to meet Esther, his wife, and that was it. I went and made my speech, and I left. Later, his wife passed away here in Israel, and I sent him a note and just said, I'm sorry to hear about your wife. I remember meeting her at the hotel, and sorry to hear it. He then asked, could he come and see me? He wanted to come and thank me for being kind to him. He came to the embassy. I think we met for maybe 30 minutes. We had a nice, pleasant visit. The funny thing was the New York Times reported that it was a secret meeting. Tucker, if you've ever been to the U.S. Embassy, you would know there's no such thing as a secret meeting at the U.S. Embassy.
Sure.
There are cameras everywhere. You walk through Marines, you walk through security, you walk through the front office.
I don't know. I mean, he said, there cannot be a secret meeting, but, it's not necessarily like a formal thing, but, you could technically, why couldn't anybody have a secret meeting? I mean, technically you could. So I sort of disagree with him here, but let's just continue.
And there's a dozen or more people that are going to check you out when you come. And before you get there, you're going to have to give us your passport information. You're going to have to be vetted and screened and all of this stuff. So the idea that it was secret was ludicrous. The whole idea is, look, Jonathan Pollard did something that was terribly wrong. He sold secrets. He shouldn't have done it. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison and spent 30, actually was, I think he was sentenced to maybe more than 30 years, but he spent 30 years in prison. Most people convicted of something similar, which was one count, I believe, would have spent 2 to 4, but he spent 30. I don't have a problem with him spending 30 because I think what he did was despicable. I'm not defending anything about what he did. But even people like the former director of the CIA, a number of other senators on the Senate Foreign Relations of the Senate Intel Committee said that he should be allowed to leave and move to Israel if he wanted to. So it, to me, was not as big a deal that I had this basically courtesy meeting. He wanted to thank me for being nice to him when his wife died. That's pretty much the
You advocated for his release when you ran for, I remember it, in 2011, long before he had served 30 years. And I agree with you that there are a lot of people languishing in prison, in our country and in this country, many countries, for longer periods than they deserve. And I think it's a Christian impulse to want to see them free. But this was the greatest traitor in modern American history who sold our battle plans against the Soviet Union, our main enemy in the Cold War, to.
I think it's like, so it's not only that he should have been put into prison, but the supposed alliance with Israel and the lobby and everybody involved should have been questioned, So when he says, like something like, you've been for 30 years, should have been for 3 and 4. This makes Huckabee doesn't look as good. I'm just saying.
The Israeli government, which according to our Reagan CIA director, Bill Casey, then gave them to the Soviet Union. So this was the most profound betrayal of the United States in my lifetime. Why advocate for that guy's release before he serves his full sentence?
Right.
If that were the case in 2011, it would have been because I had a number of friends that suggested that he had more than served time, and he didn't want to live in the U.S. anymore. He wanted to live in Israel. But my association with him, again, I had never met him until I met him in Jerusalem at a hotel. That was the first time I had ever encountered him.
I'm friends with 1 million bad people, or I've talked to 1 million bad
I'm
people.
sitting here with you. I mean, come on.
I mean, she's the same with tax collectors. So trust me, do not judge people who are friends or know or enjoy the company of immoral people, because it's not an endorsement of their immoral behavior. Pollard is different. I think once you become U.S. ambassador, the representative of the President of the United States in the United States of America in a foreign country, and then you invite not only the most damaging betrayer in our lifetimes, but also a guy who continues to advocate for betrayal. So he gave an interview, as I know you know, in 2021 to Israeli media, in which he said, I would encourage Jewish Americans with security clearances to spy for Mossad against their own country, the United States, because, and I'm pretty much quoting him, all Jews should have dual loyalty. That's not repentance. That's not someone who feels bad about what he did. That's someone who's encouraging American Jews to betray their country. That's pretty heavy, don't you think?
Oh, I do. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think, let's remember, it was President Trump who probably facilitated his departure. And I'm certainly supportive of President Trump. I think you are. And
Pollard's not. He called him a madman after your meeting.
That's why I say Pollard is not, for me, the real issue. It was the fact that he did something that was despicable. I'm not denying that. Of course he did. And he paid dearly for it, 30 years in prison, and he should have. That's what he should have done. There's no question about that.
Why meet with him in the U.S. Embassy? Your colleagues said they were shocked. They said...
Who were the colleagues that said they were shocked?
Quoted on background in the New York Times. I think the meeting was in August. This could all be fake. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, the same New York Times said it was a secret meeting. And I'm telling you, there's no such thing as a secret meeting in the U.S. Embassy.
Do you see why the U.S. ambassador hosting a convicted betrayer of his own country who's encouraging America?
Like, his insistence that there cannot be a secret meeting it's kind of funny. And he's already looking trampled there. He's like, I don't know if it's intentional, he's acting, or I don't know what's going on, but he's looking trembling there.
Americans to continue to betray their country would seem shocking.
Well, I would say that it wasn't that you make it sound like I'm hosting a meeting. I simply met with him. I meet with people all the time.
Some can just walk in without a...
No, they have to have an appointment. Of course they do.
Oh, so it is hosting him then, I think.
Well, I don't know if it was hosting, but it was certainly, he was able to come to the U.S. Embassy to have a meeting at his request. I did. And frankly, I don't regret it. I met with a lot of people over the course of the time I've been here, and we'll meet with a lot more. That's it.
So if you spend the evening at my house, you are guaranteed to find yourself in a conversation about the Hallow app. And when he does go back, truth for your next, the best /Tucker. It's the best.
There have been Americans in prison in Israel. There have also been, and there continue to be, dozens and dozens and dozens of sex offenders, accused sex offenders from the United States who fled to Israel, including one recently, an Israeli government official who was caught trying to molest a 15-year-old girl and fled to Israel and is not going back to the United States to stand charges for attempted molestation of a child. Have you advocated for the Israeli government to return him to the United States?
I'm not familiar with that case. It has not come to us at the embassy. So I'm not aware. Is this
All right. Look, I don't know how is he not familiar with that. So, which crime is worse? To be like ignorant, to be incompetent that you did not know, or to be willfully ignorant? Because there is no, anything else. Either that you're so incompetent that you did not know, or you're willfully not wanting to know. Really, no other third option here, right? And I think that he knows. I think that this is a lie. I think that the third option is that he's lied about it, that he knew, and he doesn't care because he works for the same people. Big surprise? I don't know.
person in Nevada?
That is correct.
Okay, I
In
heard
Clark
about
County, I would imagine so.
Yeah, I heard about it, but I heard about it through open source media. It was never something that was presented to us, but I would have no problem with him being extradited back to the U.S.
You're the president's and our country's representative in the state of Israel, so I think it would fall to you to advocate with your friend, the prime minister, to say, wait a second, we have a very close relationship. We're obviously the single largest source of outside funding for this country. How can you take an accused child molester and shield him from American justice,
Right.
send him back to the United States? Have you ever had that conversation?
No, because the prime minister would not be the proper person
That may be
in
right.
Israel
Pardon my ignorance. But
that would deal with an extradition. It would go through their court system. And so the prime minister is separate, very similar to what we have in the U.S., where there is a separation of powers. So it would go through something other than the prime minister.
have you advocated to the courts, to judges, to anybody in the Israeli justice system?
There has never been a request for me to engage in that. I would be happy to do it if the
So let me get this straight, right? So if nobody tells him, he would not do it, Like, so I don't know, where do you work? So it don't matter where you work. Let's imagine that you miss something that is supposedly part of your job, right? So let's say that somebody came. So if you're working at McDonald's, right, and somebody came and stole money from the store, and you say, and then you're asked, did you help prevent him? Did you call anybody? Did you do anything? Like, no, because I was not asked. Are you dumb? Look at this guy. He's like, nobody asked me to advocate for that. Well, you should have. You're an American ambassador to Israel. You should have did something. You should have asked somebody. You should have did anything. You should have known, which I'm guessing that he does know, but he's lying about. So it's like an excuse that is worse than the first crime. It is worse. Like, his excuses that he gives is making it even worse,
The White House sent a message to me. I do work for the president. I serve at his pleasure. If anyone at the White House were to say to me, would you please go and make a case for it? But probably if that were to happen, it wouldn't come through the embassy as much as it would likely come from the Department of Justice at the U.S. in D.C. They would make the request. They might involve us, but they very likely would not.
Does it seem strange to you that people accused of child molestation in the United States are allowed to have
Good
refuge
question.
within the borders of our closest ally?
Very good question.
How that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I would say that
If you've molested an American child, shouldn't you be required to
it's
stand justice?
it's an allegation. Let's be clear. One of the things about our system of jurisprudence, you're innocent until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So if the
Okay. Look, I've been to court so many times. I've seen it so many times. As far as I've seen, I have been guilty until proven innocent. This is what happens to a lot of people. If you are in America, if you're an American, or if you have lived in America, any traffic violation, anytime you have been to court, you would know that you're treated as guilty until proven innocent. So the fact that they're bringing up this thing, so okay, so you're innocent until proven guilty, maybe only if you're from the Chosenites, from the chosen people, maybe. I mean, this is what it seems like to me. I don't know. That's what it seems like to me.
Charges are there. Should he be extradited? I would say so.
The charges are there.
Yeah, okay, so they should be. But that's a Justice Department decision, and they're the ones who should be pursuing it. To my knowledge, they haven't. They certainly haven't engaged the U.S. Embassy over it.
Why would the Israeli government harbor fugitives from justice in the United States?
I'm not sure that
There are dozens
That they're-
and dozens and dozens.
Dozens.
In fact, there's an Israeli group that keeps track of them that is dedicated, Jewish Israeli group dedicated to combating the molestation of children, and keeps a long list. And any, you can look it up, and I wouldn't.
Tucker, I hope you're not saying that you think the Israelis support the molestation of children.
Obviously, I'm not saying that.
Okay,
I'm saying
good,
that the
good.
Israeli government allows, shields
Yeah.
accused child
I'm not sure
molesters
that's
from justice in the
I'm
United
not
States.
sure I could say that that's something that is provable. I don't know. But I am not aware that the Israeli government is shielding people.
You obviously want to sleep well and fashionably. Brooklyn bed and perhaps can visit.
And I just want to make sure that I pronounce this man's name correctly. It's Tom, I believe, Alexandrovich? I think that's right, and I've written it down, but of course my handwriting is so terrible I can't read it. But yes, he is an Israeli, I believe, cybersecurity official who was at a conference in Las Vegas last year and was caught up in a sting designed to catch people soliciting sex from children. He was one of a number of people arrested for this. He was arraigned and charged. And then 2 days later, he fled to Israel and did his first hearing by Zoom. He was allowed for some reason to leave for a foreign country, having already been charged for a attempted molestation of a child. And he remains here now. And there have been many news stories about this. And I just wonder if you would ask the Israeli government to put him on a plane and send him back to face justice for attempting to molest an American child. It doesn't seem complicated.
No, I wouldn't mind doing that, but I want to find out if the Justice Department of the U.S. has already sought to extradite him. Is there anything in process? I don't know.
Why wouldn't they seek to extradite
I
him?
have no
An
idea.
accused
That's a
sex
question
offender?
for the Justice Department.
I
Not,
have many questions for the Justice Department, like why are millions of Epstein files still classified? Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. I haven't kept up with that. I've never met the man. I don't know him.
You haven't kept up with the Epstein disclosure?
I mean, only from a distance. I'm 6,000 miles away from D.C. these days, and I'm pretty sure that there's so
The
much going on.
current president of Israel, current president, who I know you know, President Herzog,
Knowing very well.
apparently was at Pedo Island. That's what it says in the disclosures. And of course, we know that the former prime minister, Ehud Barak, was living on and off at Epstein's house. So still living high-level Israeli officials are directly implicated in Epstein's life, if not his crime. So I would think that you'd be following this.
Only I was not aware that there was any connection with President Herzog. I would be surprised to hear that. And I knew there was about.
All right, let me just fix how the camera's position is, because I feel it's like a little bit off. All right, it looks way better now. Let's get back to it.
The former prime minister, who apparently had a lot of dealings with Epstein.
Business dealings, and by the way, I'm not alleging anything, but I mean, it's in the Epstein files, and I don't know that I've heard the current president of Israel respond to it, but he is listed as a visitor to Pedo Island, so that's kind of a big deal. I wonder, considering there are so many suggestions in the files, as I'm sure you know, of sexual abuse, and given that Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender, I wonder why the administration you work for would be holding millions of files, which I believe belong to the public, hidden for, quote, national security reasons. What would those national security reasons be, do you think?
Honestly, I think you've probably got more access to the White House sometimes than I do. You should ask them.
Well, but you're the government official representing that White House.
In Israel. And I represent the U.S. in Israel to the Israeli government from the U.S. government. But honestly, nobody has presented that to us.
Well, now
we have
that
a
you know
pretty
that
dynamic situation here. I don't know if you know that or not, but there's a lot going on in this part of the world. And frankly, that has not been top line item.
But you're surprised to hear that the current president of Israel, whom you know, is listed
Yeah.
as a visitor to Pedo Island.
Had never heard that. Never heard it even in the Israeli press.
Are you going to ask him next time you see him?
I'll be happy to talk to him almost every week.
I guess what I'm asking is not simply as a representative of my government or a high U.S. official, but just as like a man and a father and a Christian. How could you resist saying, like, were you on Pedo Island with Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, if I'm not aware of it, and secondly, there are a lot of things that go on in the world. I don't question every single person about every single thing that may be
President
alleged
of the
about.
country. And
I understand all that, but this is the first I've ever heard of this. So why do you expect me to have knowledge of something like that?
Well, because you attacked me personally for suggesting that Jeffrey Epstein had ties to Mossad, and you said that.
You think he does?
What's very clear he does from the
You
files.
think he does? From where do you get that?
Well, the fact that he was in contact repeatedly with members of the Israeli government, including the current president and the former prime minister, and all kinds of Israeli intel-connected people, I'm not.
Now it's been getting kind of tough now, and they're like, you accuse me, and I accuse you, and you attacked me, and I attacked you. So we'll see what is that going.
Not saying he worked for Mossad. I don't think we know that, but there's no question that he had extensive contact with CIA.
But I think you said it, a turning point event. Everybody knows Jeffrey Epstein.
I said everyone thinks, and it turns out everyone was right, that he did have.
I'm not sure everyone was right or everyone thinks.
Okay, but you said that I was lying, and I don't want to make this about me.
I don't think I said you were lying, Tucker. I don't recall.
I'm just saying, why don't we release all the files, and then we don't need to guess?
I got no problem with that. Go ahead.
Would you
it's not
call on
mine
the,
to-
well, because you weighed in on it and said that this was not true, when of
I
course,
said there was no evidence.
well, there's quite a bit of evidence, but you haven't apparently bothered to read any of the files. Is that what you're saying?
I have not read the Epstein files. Apparently you have.
Well, they're on the
But,
internet. and
but
have
when
been
you
for a
say
month.
that everybody knows that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad
That
agent,
everyone believes that.
I don't think everybody does. I don't know.
Well, everyone knows that he.
All right, so nobody believes that Epstein is a Mossad agent. Nobody believes that. I don't know if this is serious or this is all an act, because how is a person that is he that out of touch with the American people? Is he this out of touch with anything and everything? Is he dying of dementia?
Had contact with, and by the way, not just Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, which is much more distressing for me. I'm not Israeli, I'm American. I don't want my government having any contact with someone like Jeffrey Epstein. So the shame
I wouldn't either.
is on the United States, as far as I'm concerned, just to be totally clear about that. Everyone's very sensitive about the Israel connection, not at all sensitive about the US connection, which I find very revealing. We should care about what our government does first, I think. But since you weighed in on it and said there's no evidence, I'm surprised that since that evidence has been open to the public for a month, since you've already weighed in publicly on this question, that you've made no effort to evaluate that evidence. Why is that?
I just told you I was certainly not aware that there were some specific allegations. I knew about the former prime minister, but I don't know him. I'm not sure I ever met him in my many times. I've been to Israel over 100 times since 1973. The first time I came here was 1973, July. And it's almost 53 years of coming and going to this country. So I know the country well. I know a lot of people here, but I don't know everything. And
In any other context, I would not have laughed, but to be in Israel and to have this sort of like smirkish face and be like, I know this country well. I know this country wink wink well. This guy, man, he has such a punchable face.
I don't know everybody, but I do a lot of people.
Of course, no, and I can see your love for it, and I think that's great. But I'm talking about the U.S. government and its
I can see your love for it. Yeah.
responsibility to. There's a lot of complaint about conspiracy theories and everyone, he's a hater. Everyone's assigning motive. But there's a way to end these conversations very quickly with facts. And I'm highly confused by.
Have you brought this up to the president?
No, I don't work for him. I've said this many
I
times.
know
in
you don't work
public.
for him, but you go to the White House and you see people there. You and J.D. Vance are very good friends. So have you brought this up to them? Because
I have brought this up
is
in public
it's
many
not on my
times.
portfolio, but apparently it's very strongly on your mind, and I'm
Child
just thinking that
molestation
you should
is a
deal with it.
significant concern for me.
Well, it should be for everybody. But if
Well, there's
you're
an acute, there is a
particularly
charged child molester.
But I'm saying
in-
if you are very involved in the details of this,
I'm not.
and you think it's the U.S. government that's hiding and shielding somebody, then bring it up to the people that
Oh,
you
I don't
personally know.
think that. I know it because the Justice Department has said we have millions of documents we're not releasing.
Why are they not releasing them?
I'm asking you as a U.S. government official.
Well, but
what the answer
a
might be.
government official at the embassy in Jerusalem that has not one thing to do with the Justice Department and what they're investigating on any given day,
Again,
unless it involves.
and I don't want to
Yeah.
argue or talk in circles, but you were the one who brought it up and said it's absolutely not true.
I was only responding to what I heard you say.
Okay, but
And
now
it was
that you know
everyone
there's
knows.
evidence and we can settle this debate, you haven't looked at the evidence and you're not pushing for the release of the total corpus of evidence. And I'm confused because I want to believe that your goal is to get to the.
And if you have not seen anything about Mike Huckabee until now, you would think he's such an innocent little angel, you know, like, oh, I never know anything. I don't know. You're the one. What are you talking about? You know, you came up in so many and said some nasty things, said some things, and, you know, it's just, he's like Mike Huckabee in a fair democracy, he would be deposed of his place, and he will be fined and possibly jailed. Just saying.
Truth, and the fastest way to do that is by releasing the evidence. Don't you think?
You suggest that I can release the evidence?
I'm suggesting you could call for it right now.
Well, fine, call for it. I would let's have it all open. I thought it was being all opened up for everything I know.
Once it's open, I hope you'll read it because it's really interesting, and then it puts to rest a lot of the debate, and it ends the name calling because we can say here it is right there, and we don't have to call people names. We can just assess the documents. Let me ask you.
But you bring it up. I hope you will bring it up to people at the White House. That
Oh, I'm bringing it up right now. I'm bringing it up now, and I'm asking, I just want to say this one last time, as the U.S. ambassador to Israel, I hope that you will make a formal request to the Israeli government to send every accused sex offender in this country back to the United States to face justice.
But he won't. He will not do that. He's a traitor. This country's been bought and sold. He will not be doing that. This whole conversation is a big sham. We're not been doing anything about it. This is just to sedate the masses. I don't buy either of these people. You know, I sort of like Tucker a lot, obviously more than the other guy. But that I don't believe any of this is even real. You know, if anything was, action would be taken. You know, I'm not seeing any action. Have you seen any action? I'm seeing words. I'm seeing a lot of words. I'm seeing a lot of words, not seeing any action.
And I don't understand why that hasn't been done. I'm confused.
Well, we'll try to clear up all the confusion that we have.
Well, if someone's been accused of
sure,
trying to
yeah.
molest a child, I think it's.
Then certainly, and I'll check with the Justice Department because it is a DOJ issue and it would be handled through DOJ, the U.S., to the court systems in Israel. That's how it would be handled.
But the first step is the Israeli government saying, yes, we will allow you to extradite this person back. The person is being shielded by the government. That's why the person's here. That's why he fled here, so he wouldn't have to stand trial for trying to molest a child. I want to get to as I said at the outset, I said something awful that I regret that my wife barked at me about. I lashed out at Christian Zionists and evangelicals, and I just want to say again that I'm sorry. I've always liked them because they're pro-life and they're also really nice people. So for the third time, I'm sorry that I said that. I think part of my problem was I don't understand the theology, and you are not a fake Baptist minister. You're an actual minister. You had a church for many years. You're an actual theologian. So, and I mean this with sincerity, I hear people say, those who bless Israel will be blessed. I know it's a reference to Genesis. I don't understand the connection between that concept and modern Israel and the geopolitical world. And so I'm going to stand back and
Well,
ask
let's
you to
first
explain.
define because, from my days as a debater in high school and college, one of the things I knew, you didn't start the debate till you defined the terms.
Amen.
Let's define the terms.
Thank you.
What is,
Thank you.
What is a Christian Zionist?
Okay.
What does that mean to you? What does it mean?
I don't know. It's the people who call me a Nazi for asking what Israel means. I mean, that's kind of my, I don't even know.
But here's the point. If you say a Christian Zionist is a person who has a brain virus and is guilty of heresy, that's a pretty big charge.
I know. I shouldn't have made it. I made it out of anger and ignorance.
So,
and I'm
Christian, I think we can agree, is somebody who follows Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
Has a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, believes in his death, burial, resurrection, has repented of one's sins, and have accepted him as one Savior. Would that be fair?
Amen.
Christian. Define that. Zionist. A Zionist simply means a person who believes that the Jewish people have a right to have a homeland where they have security and safety. Did you believe that the Jews have?
He is twisting those definitions so bad. A Zionist is not a person who believes that Jewish people should have safety. A Zionist is a person who believes that certain Jewish people have the right to genocide people in Palestine and take their place. In a nutshell, that Palestine should be only for Jewish people, no other people, especially the Arabs, especially the Palestinian people. To destroy churches and build synagogues is Zionism in Palestine. This is what does it mean. That's only a political term. Now, as we are starting to learn, it also includes the worship of Baal, apparently.
A right to live in Israel. Do you believe that Jews have a right to live in Israel? That would be a Zionist. That's all a Zionist is.
I
It's
have
not
a million questions
Okay.
about what all of those terms mean.
Yeah.
I would not think that Tucker would say that he's a Zionist because he has more idea or at least seems or acts at least to have more idea about what the public thinks, and so I would not think he would say that he's a Zionist. I think he's seen way too much other people.
But conceptually, I wish Israel no harm. I don't want to see them
Do you want them to have a place where they can live with safety and
let
security?
me so I saw this recently in an extremely telling exchange between the lieutenant governor of Texas, who I know and I've always liked, and a woman I don't know, never met, who's on the Religious Liberty Commission or something. And she said, I'm a Catholic, but I'm not a Zionist. And they have this ferocious exchange. And he kept saying, and everyone on the panel seemed to keep saying, you have to believe in Israel's right to exist. Which I've never kind of questioned, just for the record, but it did raise two questions I think are really important, and I hope you'll answer them. One is, where does that right come from?
I would say it comes from, essentially, you could say it comes from the Bible. I would say that it does.
Oh, wow.
But it comes also from a long iteration of historical precedents going to the Balfour Declaration of 1917. It comes from the League of Nations 1927. It comes from the United Nations 1947,
Right.
the Declaration of Independence of the Israel State, May of 1948. They were immediately attacked. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1956. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1967 by 5 countries. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1973 in the Yom Kippur War.
Like, this guy is a sack of crap, but I'm not sure what is up with the lightning, man. It's like, I feel like every time I do something, does this look better? I don't want to look so yellow and crap. Let me look yellow at least. Maybe this looks somewhat better. Ah, man, looks like crap. Looks like absolute crap. I wish for the thing to not look as yellow. That is stupid. Here, let me try to fix it. Alright, how about this? This feels a lot better so far. Alright, let me get my hair this way or that way or something, and let's get back right to it.
They won the war. The point is, does Israel have a right to exist? They also had wars in 1982 in Lebanon. They've had intifadas, 2 of those. They've had
Lebanon
war
again in 06.
2014.
I was there. No, I'm very familiar with the modern history of the state.
Okay.
Pretty familiar, I think. And I've been
But a
here.
Zionist simply means somebody who believes that Israel has a right to exist. Now, the question is, do you
there
believe Israel has a right to
I
exist?
guess. I mean, I want Israel
Yes.
to exist. Well, no, but I want to know what that means. So, like, do other countries have a right to exist?
Well, they do exist.
Do they have a right to exist? You keep saying Israel has a right to exist, and I want to know what other countries
They
have,
have
a
a
right.
legal right because every international body in the last 100 years has said the Jewish people have a right
I
to
understand.
their
You explained
indigenous
it, but
homeland.
my question
so that's a
is,
legal right.
what
Do
other-
they have a biblical right? I would say that yes, but you may say they don't.
I don't know. I'm actually
Okay.
sincerely interested in finding out what you mean by a biblical right. But first, to the legal right, does any other country on the planet have the same right that Israel has to exist?
Well, you could
about
say,
that?
does Jordan have a right to exist? When it was Transjordan and the Brits came and divided up the Middle East and they gave some land to Jordanians and they gave some land to the Saudis and they gave some land to various Middle Eastern countries, and it was all carved up. And the French gave Lebanon its right to exist. Do they have a right to exist?
Do they?
Well, why not?
Okay. So that's my. So every
Does
country.
the U.S. have a right to exist?
I'm asking you.
Okay, and I'm telling you, I think the U.S. has a right to exist.
Okay.
We came here, we came there, we're in Israel now talking, but does the U.S. have a right to exist? Does anyone question whether we have a right to exist?
I don't. Yeah, but I, of course, I'm for America. You know.
Good for you.
But so every current country on the map has the same right to exist that Israel has. Is that what you're saying?
I think what we're saying is that when a country has established itself and it is following international law, it has been deemed by numerous bodies.
Has been doing anything but following international law, and in my opinion, it's not only that it does not have a right to exist; it is morally abhorrent for it to exist as in the state of it exists now, as in apartheid state. And if it's not an apartheid state, then if they make a vote, it will be named Palestine, which what this place is and has been, will be, and yeah, they're just making it harder on themselves, really, you know.
That it is indigenous to its homeland, as Israel is. This is its homeland. It goes back 3,800 years to the time of Abraham. It's not that
hold on. Now I'm
the
getting
Jewish people just showed up here in 1948 and said, we're going to have some land.
Hold on. So those are two different tracks, and I just.
They literally just showed up there as refugees and they just stole people's homes. That's how it started. That's how it happened. They literally just showed up. People like, oh, we ran away from the Holocaust. Blah 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 blah. Would you be able to help us? Can I go to your home for just a little bit until I can get on my own? You know, and they have like a German, a Yiddish accent because they're from Germany. And yeah, and then one day all the Palestinian people come, you know, so I'm a Palestinian person as an example, and I came back to my home and I find the person who I helped taking over my own house, and they're threatening me if I come inside. That's what happened, literally that's what freaking happened. They literally just showed up. They're not from there. People who are in Palestine are more indigenous, more Jewish, more Semitic, more anything that has to do with that land than any European migrants or people who migrated from other places to that region, forcefully or not. People who came from Europe came by choice. People who came from the Middle East came forced by the Israeli government because they would bomb them in their country. So that they bombed. So Israelis, the fake entity people, bombed the Jewish people in Iraq per se to force them to come to Israel. They've been always doing that.
I want to make sure that we separate them so I understand each one separately.
All right.
So you're saying there's the modern legal framework, and so you said a country that abides by international law has a right to exist.
I would say that is a part of
Would
its
it
existence.
be would the inverse be true that a country that does not abide by international law forfeits its right to exist?
Not necessarily if it has the capacity to stay and make its case known. But there have been
I mean, basically, just becoming meaningless. So if you say that if a country if it still violates the international law and it has the capacity to exist, then it should exist. Then it has a right to exist. So you're saying might makes right. That's what you're saying. You're saying that if I can exist, then I have a right to exist. So it becomes meaningless. You know, like if if you ask someone, you know, do I have a right to be in your room? And then they tell you, Well, if you can't get into it, then you have a right to be in my room. What? What? That's not what a right is. A right is that, it just becomes meaningless. It just becomes like, okay, it means no laws. It means that if you are in my room, then you have a right to it. If you can't sustain yourself, then you have a right to exist. That's just meaningless. We're talking non-English, right? This is a non-language. This is like if you divide by zero. This is nonsense. We're reaching a place into the conversation where it's literally nonsense.
Jewish people in this land,
okay, but that's a
in this
separate-
very land, for 3,800 years.
Oh no. It's not.
Okay. So, but you're saying as the modern nation state with borders and a military and a Knesset and just all the kind of trappings of a modern country, all of which I support, that country has, every country on the planet has the same right as Israel to exist because it does exist. Is that what you're saying? I'm just trying to understand the concept here.
Well, I think what we're trying to get to is Christian Zionism, and you've taken this way off the
I
road
don't
here.
know that I have. I don't
Yeah.
need to. Christian Zionism is a separate thing, but I just keep hearing people say Zionism is the belief
That's
that
the fundamental argument that's going on. Does Israel have a right to live in their indigenous, ancient, historical land?
On stolen land, no. So, okay, you come and you kick me out of my own house and be like, I have a right to it because 3,000 years ago, my supposed ancestors. Like what, buddy? I've been living here since 3,000 years. If any people who lived 3,000 years ago, they've been my ancestors here. And then Mike Huckabee comes about here and he's like, do I have to stay in your home which I stole? I have a right to stay in this place. I stole it rightfully. I stole your home rightfully. I came all the way from Germany and I stole your home rightfully. And I am Jewish. I am Jewish, yeah. So that speech is a crap. Pieces of absolute crap. And this guy, his face reeks of the feeling of crap. Like he looks like a living piece of crap. Like I want to vomit just looking at this guy. He's a talking, walking piece of crap. He looks like, look at his face. I don't know if you can't see it. Let's try to get back to it. I'm gonna have I don't know.
A land that has been affirmed throughout international organizations, a land that has direct ties to the Jewish people.
I just want to know if this is a universal principle. I guess that's
Yeah.
what I'm getting at, because if it's not,
Yeah,
then
it
it's
is.
meaningless to me. Because as a Christian, I believe in.
Like I at this point, I've been honest. It's kind of hard to go even on watching this because it's already meaningless. Like we have reached a point in the conversation that this is meaningless. What Huckabee is saying is meaningless right now. This is gibberish. Doesn't mean anything anymore. We already reached a point where you're saying, anybody, if a country can't sustain itself and can be, then it has a right to exist. This is not a meaningful sentence. He's a piece of. This doesn't mean anything. So I'm trying to go on. I hope I can finish this, but I'm just saying this is becoming harder to watch because it doesn't mean anything. Like I might be I might as well be staring at a freaking wall.
Universal principle. Something is right for everyone, or it's wrong for everyone.
If the
We
Jews
don't
didn't-
believe in special cases.
But here's the
I don't
question.
think.
If the Jews didn't have this land, would the Jews have a right to any land?
I don't know. I'm not attacking the Jews.
Why does a religious group have a right to a land? Indigenous people to a land have the most right to the land. If you are living in a place and you are there, you're a community there, so it's basically it's if you it just doesn't work like how this guy is talking about. It's not like, do the Muslims have a right to their land? Do the Christians have a right to their land? Do the Hindus, do the Shintos have a right to a land? This question is meaningless because no religious group have a right to a land. This is not how that works. Land is transferred usually through legal matters. If you transfer it through war, then you are living in a whatchamacallit, it's just like a free for all, you know. So you know, if you're saying that you have right to the land because you took it by force, then heck, what if I come and take it by force? You know, and this is basically what's gonna happen if they allow this, and this is why America has been losing. This is why our government has screwed us over.
I'm asking if this applies to every people in every nation. Does every nation have the same right to its own homeland, to its own physical land that you say Israel does?
I feel like we're in a rabbit hole here.
No, I think it's a very straightforward question.
No, but
does that right extend to other countries other than Israel?
But the most important thing that is going on in our culture right now is whether or not the people that are yelling in the streets from the river to the sea, whether that's a legitimate point of view to say that there should not be a Jewish homeland. There should not be a Jewish
You'll
state.
never hear me say
period.
that. I just want to know.
I know you haven't said it, but that's the argument.
It's one of the arguments going on globally. And the United States, excuse me, has a pretty narrow view, I would say, in our media culture, of what's happening around the world.
So it's illegal to advocate to be against genocide, to be from the river to the sea. Those people would be free. It's illegal. We cannot say that. How dare you? How, like, can you imagine if we were going, if it's the same time as the Holocaust, you know, in Germany, and you know, and you say Jewish people should be free, you know, from the Rhine River to this place to the Baltic Sea, Jews should be free. And somebody comes, excuse me, do you mean that the German people don't deserve to exist? You are anti-German, racist piece of crap. We will kill you. We should not be able to say this. We will castrate you. We will just like absolute unleash hell on you, and then go worship Baal and eat children on the side. I'm just, you know, like again, it's hard for me to even watch this because I'm feeling it's meaningless. It's all BS. It's just like I'm losing IQ. I lost IQ points. I lost brain cells watching this.
Plenty of countries
I'm
having this
losing brain
debate.
cells watching this.
Stonehenge is a lot older than the first temple in Israel. And it was built by the same people who live there now. It's the same people. And they are being pushed off their island and outnumbered by people from other places. And so in Great Britain, in Ireland, which is also a country with a nation of people, a race, if you will, that is being displaced, replaced,
Who are they being replaced by?
immigrants
Okay.
from other places.
I just wanted to clarify because I was one of the.
Well, just as a demographic matter, it's just like you can look at the numbers. It's not controversial. Just look at the numbers. There'll be a minority in their country. And their people have been there longer than Jews have been in Israel. And so they're having this debate too. That's all I'm saying. And lots of places are having this debate.
Sure.
So does that principle apply to everyone, or is it specific just to Israel?
I think it applies specifically to Israel. It applies to anyone who can prove that they have some connection to the land and connection
You know, yay for me, not for thee. It's basically what he said.
to the history and connection to international law. But Israel, I think, does
Why
have
do you
an
keep bringing up
extraordinary.
international law? So if, again,
No, but let me finish this,
Yes.
Tucker, because here's the point. We're talking about Christian Zionism. The idea that as a Christian, I believe in both the Old and the New Testament. Why wouldn't I? I'm a person of the book. There are 80 million evangelical Christians in the United States. What makes us who we are is our adherence to the Scripture, our belief that the Bible, all of it, not part of it, but all of it, is the Word of the living God.
Yeah.
So if I believe in the Old and the New Testament, I do believe that there is a very specific call to the Jewish people that started with Abraham, and he called them out of what is now modern day Iraq, said, "Come where I send you." He came, this is the land. Genesis 12:3, he says, "I will bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you." In Genesis 17, he looks out at the world, he says, "Look, and this is where I'm giving you the land."
I think
And
it's
since that time, there have been people living in this land
Right.
connected to that moment of history. So there is a historical connection that
I'm
is
not
unbroken.
You've said that, and I want to ask you what that means a little more specifically, if that's
Okay.
okay. But first, let me just say that you could say the same thing of Britons who've been there in their land longer.
Is anyone trying to tell the Brits they can't live there anymore?
No, what's happening is
But they are saying that to the Jews.
Oh, okay. But I just wonder if you would extend the same sympathy or the same principle. You don't. You seem like this is. You think I'm trying to trap you? I'm not. I'm at all trying to trap you. It'd be as simple as saying, Native Britons
I
have the
got
same.
no problem with the native Brits having their land.
Having the
But
right
my
to
point
their
is, I
land,
don't know
and
that there
so-
is a biblical connection for the Brits.
Okay.
But I would
So-
say,
so that's what it comes
take
down
that
to.
off the table, and I think there's still a basis for the Jews having this little bitty strip of real estate.
I'm
And it is a
not even
tiny
arguing with
strip
you.
of
I'm just
real
trying
estate.
to, at all. I'm just
Okay.
trying to understand what it is that you're saying, because it's not obvious to me, and maybe it's an IQ problem, but I'm having trouble understanding this. But let me just go back to just clarify one thing.
Okay.
You've brought up international law at least twice, maybe 3 times, as a basis for Israel's legitimacy. If Israel was out of compliance with international law, whatever that is, would it be less legitimate?
Depends on if the law and the way it's applied is legitimate. There are some applications of so-called international.
All right. His ability to be absolutely funny is astonishing here. So, can you imagine if like the police stop you and be like, "Why are you stopping me?" And he says, "Well, because you're breaking the law," and then you're saying, "Well, the law is not right." What? Excuse me. So the law, the supposed law, which is illegal, it's not a moral law at all, allowed for this entity to exist, and now you're saying if the same thing that made you exist is opposing you, that they're now wrong. So they have been right, now they're wrong according to what you. It seems very self-serving. You might as well just say, I am right and everybody is wrong, and it's like a might makes right sort of thing. Like it is because I said so. There is no argument here. It's all nonsense, basically. I'm tired of saying this. This conversation is nonsense, absolute nonsense. Except that Huckabee is just like revealing himself as a complete just butt. You know, he's a complete ass.
Law that are not legitimate.
I agree.
Look at the ICC or the ICJ.
I agree.
Utterly ridiculous. One of the reasons I'm so grateful President Trump and Secretary Rubio are pushing hard, trying to get rid of the ICC and the ICJ, is because they have become rogue organizations that are no longer really about an equal application of law and
I
justice.
don't know enough about it to say if that's true or not. But I'm interested that you yourself appealed to international law as a basis of Israel's
But what I'm looking
legitimacy.
at is the whole of the last 100 years.
The Balfour Declaration is not exactly international law, by the way. It was
Well,
a
it was
letter, I think.
It was maybe not law, but it was a declaration. It was an assumption and a declaration that was done by Lord Balfour in Great Britain. At that time, this land was under the British mandate, and he said the Jews should have the land that was theirs from 3,800 years ago. It was simple as that.
Right. And I'm not debating that. I'm just.
Yeah.
It was not.
very
It was
historic
not
thing.
international law. It was a colonial power saying, "Okay,
But then
here's how
later
we're
it
going to
was
divide up the
international
world
law
after
under the League
fall
of
the
Nations,
Ottoman
under the
Empire."
United Nations, and then because of the victories that Israel had against those who tried to annihilate them, and it wasn't just that they were trying to take a little piece of their land, they tried to annihilate them.
Okay.
And there is still to this day the shouts of from the river to
It's just the shamelessness of. I'm tired of talking, man. But I just want to say, like, the absolute shamelessness of this guy. You know, like if you come and steal my own home, if you kick me out of my own land, my own home, and you kill my children, you do atrocities on me for no reason, just to take my own land, take my own place, and then if I come and try to take my home back, oh, you're trying to eliminate me. I'm being eliminated. You're a thief. You're a squatter. You're not even supposed to be here to begin with. And you know what's really sad? That many Palestinians and many people in that are actually kind-hearted enough to let them stay if all of this ends, which I'm actually mad about. As a person who has a background there, no, I don't take anything less than all rights being returned. Every single right, every stolen land goes back to their rightful owner. Those people are not Semites. They're not actual Jews. They're atheists. They're nothing. They're nothing. look, they could have had a land like they could. It's easier probably for them to have a land in like Latin America or in the U.S. There's a lot of you know. In the U.S., have you seen all the farmland? There's a lot of farmland. You know, they could have twice as big as Israel with more resources. Why in the heck would they need to be there? And they would not need to displace anybody. But you know, they just like drinking certain blood. They like drinking children's. You know, that's that's what the Epstein files reveal. You know.
The sea. And Tucker, that means only one thing, not the shrinking of Israel, but the annihilation of Israel.
I don't think
That's
I
different.
don't think you can say that you know what it means actually, because you don't know what's in people's hearts. So why don't we just deal with the facts? Maybe some people mean it
I know
to
it's in their
mean that.
mouths. I know it's in their minds.
But I'm not, look, you'll never hear me say that.
Yeah.
What you will hear me say is I'm confused by what the definitions are. So let's go through this. You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include like basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant, so that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be, I mean,
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the
it
point.
would be a lot of places that are now countries that
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a...
I just want to comment here. I know I'm tired of talking, but the people who God gave them the land, they're the Palestinian people. They're the Jews who stayed there, who converted. Some people stayed Jews. They're Jewish Palestinian people. They're Jewish, Christian, Muslim. The people who, the children of Abraham, they're still there. They're being massacred. They're being cited, you know? So, you know, it's just...
purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started
I'm
on
not
this.
going to let you off on this because you have said
ahead.
it 3 times
Okay.
that God gave this land
Yeah.
to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here today.
What would be fine? Well, it's exactly what we're talking
Well,
about today.
but here's what I don't think
You think it would be fine if the state of Israel took over all
they don't
of
want to take it
Jordan?
over. They're not asking to take it over.
But you're saying that the reason that Israel is legitimate, has this inherent right to exist, is because, in part because God gave it to his people. And I am going to the same Bible that you're referring to and noticing that that is a huge piece of land. So if God gave them that land, then they have a right to take it now by your definition, unless I'm missing something.
Well, I think you're missing something because they're not asking to go back to take all of that. But
Okay, so like, it's basically... so you know right now, because they're not asking for it. When they ask for it, you know, they can... Like, get the heck out of here, you know?
But they
Why
are
not?
asking to at least take the land that they now occupy, they now live in, they now own legitimately, and it is a safe haven for them.
But may I ask though, as because you're explaining what Christian Zionism is and your theological beliefs. And you think you just said it would be fine with you if the state of Israel took all of
Well, I
Jordan,
was-
all of Syria, all of Lebanon.
That's really not exactly what I'm trying to say.
I'm asking,
Tucker.
is that what you said? I thought that's what you just said.
It was somewhat of a hyperbolic statement in that, you know, if that's what you feel like that we're talking about, but it isn't. We're talking about this land that Israel, the state of Israel, now lives in.
That is expanding, constantly conquering new freaking places, displacing people and killing them, and, you know. And by the way, when the Israelis, the fake entity people, when they displace people, those people do not lose their identity. When a Palestinian, when they live in Egypt, don't matter if they live there for a generation, they're Palestinians because they have grew from Palestine. Not grew as in like no. Their people, the evolution, they have been in Palestine since more than 3,000 or they've been in Palestine since maybe even 10, 20,000 years. Who knows? These settlements of humans are so old. It might have been even mixed with Neanderthals that have been specifically bred in Palestine. They're very Palestinian, and the same thing goes for the people who are in the Levant. But it's specifically for Palestine because this region had document. It is a very it is a settlement that is known for being so old. But even the people who are in Damascus, people who are in Baghdad, these places, these settlements are ancient, more than ancient, and it's going nowhere. When Israel keeps expanding, and they're expanding. He's saying we're only talking about all these borders of the current Israel. The current borders are continuously expanding, so he's lying.
And wants to have peace in. They're not trying to take over Jordan. They're not trying to take over Syria. They're not trying to take over Iraq or anywhere else.
They literally took over parts of Syria. What is this guy talking about? I'm gonna lose my mind right now. I'm gonna lose my dang mind. What is this guy talking about? They literally conquered parts of Syria. They took over like a mountain, and they took over a place almost to Damascus. They conquered parts of Lebanon, and if they could, and there's a lot of settlers that showed up like, we want to conquer all of it. What a piece of crap. He's lying, and he knows it.
But they do want to
about
protect
Lebanon?
their people. No, they're not trying to take over Lebanon.
But you're saying that as a religious man, as a Christian Zionist, you agree with a lot of religious communities here in Israel that the justification for this country is theological. It's a contract between God and his people. And I'm telling you that that contract includes a tract of land that is much larger than the current nation state.
So you may be a bigger Zionist than even the Jews are that live in
I'm
Israel.
trying to understand the implications of your theology for geopolitics,
Yeah.
because you're saying that the present government of Israel has a moral right to take over what are now other people's countries.
No, I didn't say that.
Then what are you saying?
I'm simply saying that the people who live in Israel, I think, have a right to have security, have safety. They have a right to be able to live in this land that they have a connection to for 30.
I told myself when I said a prayer that I would not get annoyed, but as someone who is, the father of daughters, when I see child molesters hiding in Israel and escaping American justice, I think I have a right to safety in my country too. So you can understand that I think most people feel they have a right to safety. I do think Israel has a right to safety, and I hope that for them, and I'm sincere, but I'm an American, and I have a right to safety in my country too.
Of course
Don't
you do.
agree? And I think, but I just want to get to this point. If Israel were to say, God gave us in Genesis 15, all of Lebanon, all of Syria, all the way up to Iraq, would that be legitimate in your view?
I don't think in this particular day and time they're asking for it.
Would it be legitimate?
I'm not sure that it would be.
Why? Because you just said that
Well,
God
because
gave it
I
to
think
them.
that there is an understanding that the people of Israel today, now, if they end up getting attacked by all these places and they win that war and they take that land, then okay, that's a whole nother discussion. But you and I started
if they
out.
win it in a war,
we
it's
started
okay?
talking about something simple, Christian Zionism.
But it turns out it's
and
not
now
simple because the
Yeah.
core of Christian Zionism, you said, and I'm quoting you, is the understanding, the belief, the theological understanding that Jews have a moral and legal, we went through the legal,
biblical.
but moral deriving from the biblical, from
Yeah.
the promises in our Bible, which we share with the Jewish people, the first part of it, the Old Testament, that it derives from God's promise to the Jews. And so I have two questions. What are the borders of that? And who are those people in 2026? And you're not the first person I've asked, but you're the most reasonable, most gentle, most theologically informed person. So I'm really hoping for an answer.
Yeah.
The first question was the borders. I can't get an answer.
Yeah.
Those borders are. So I'm going to give up. But the second question is every bit as pressing, which is who are the people? Who are the modern? Yes. Who are the descendants? So we know, and I believe, and I agree with you as a Christian, that God promised this land from modern day Iraq to modern day Egypt to this people, the Jews, to Abram's, actually not to Abram's descendants, as it says in Genesis 15.
Abraham descendants include the Arabs. Arabs, me, a descendant. I'm a freaking Semite. See, this is what Semites look like. Surprise. I'm a Semite, you know. I'm a descendant of Abraham, literally. You know. Tucker has a very nice point there.
Who are his descendants now, and how do we know who they are?
I think they're the Jews, and we know who they are because they've always been.
All right, so they're just the Jews. So, you know, if you're a son of Isaac, then you're a son of Abraham. But if you're a son of Ishmael, oh no. Oh, you're excluded from that. Go to heck with that.
A Jewish people. There has been an unbroken line of Jewish people, and they've lived in this land for 3,800 years. Sometimes not very many of them, because they were chased out all over the world. They were hunted down. They were almost annihilated during the Holocaust. They came back. To this day, Tucker, they represent, you know how many Jews there are in the whole world?
Please,
No,
I understand. First of all, the greatest genocide of Jews no one ever mentions was by the Romans, where they were literally banned from Jerusalem for 500 years.
Yeah, of course.
And it's all awful. And I'm opposed to all of that. I'm opposed to mass killing of anybody, period. I'm opposed
Glad
to
to hear you
killing.
say that.
I mean it.
Yeah,
And I hope we
I
can
believe
agree
that.
on that.
I believe that.
My question is, and it's not a bumper sticker answer, it's a sincere answer, how do we know? Because what you're saying is that certain people have a title to a highly contested region.
Give me just 1 second here. All right, we're back.
Own it in some deep sense. So I think it's fair to ask, who are they and how do we know? So the current prime minister's ancestors weren't from here within recorded history. He has no deed. Bibi Netanyahu, on one side, his family's from Poland. They're from Eastern Europe.
Right.
So how do we know that he has a connection to the people who God promised the land to, Abram's descendants? How do we know that?
Well, if you take the genealogies that come not only from the Old but the New Testament, you see that there is a historical connection through the entirety of the Old and the New Testament that details the Jewish connection to this land.
Does that include
that's
Bibi's
indisputable.
family? How do we know that if his family
Well, if they were
comes here?
scattered,
But how do we know it's the
the-
same people?
how do you-
No, why is that crazy? If you say to me,
if they speak the same language, if they worship the same God, if they follow the same Bible, if they follow the same cultures and traditions, and they always pray next year in Jerusalem, and they pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
As far as I know, Bibi is an atheist. Most Ashkenazi Jews are atheists.
And they pray facing toward Jerusalem. Does that not give you a little bit of a clue as to who they
well,
are?
let's go through those things because I would like to have a rational. This is the conversation I've wanted. Bless you. Thank you for doing this. Let's just go through those things.
Okay.
So one of the things I admire most about Israel is they resurrected a dead language in 1948. Good for them.
Well, they really didn't resurrect it. It was existent.
Okay, I'm not. That's not.
But it is
that's a
the
compliment. I'm not slighting.
No. But
anybody.
it is the first time in all of human history that a language has survived through this length of time. It's
It did not. They invented it. Modern Hebrew has nothing to do with actual Hebrew. They literally invented it. He's lying.
I would call it, you might not, but I would call it a miracle. One of many
Okay.
that you can attribute to
Netanyahu,
this
I
language.
think it's wonderful as someone who loves language. Netanyahu's parents did not speak Hebrew. Okay, they didn't live in this region. Netanyahu, the founders of this country were mostly secular. Some of them were avowed atheists. They were not praying for the peace of Jerusalem. They weren't praying at all because they didn't believe in God. There's no genealogy linking their families to the people of this land 3,000 years ago. They're not. So how do we know, since they didn't share a language, they didn't share a religion, they had no religion whatsoever, how do we know that they had a right to come here from Eastern Europe and
But they were scattered.
the land.
They were scattered to Eastern Europe.
that.
They were scattered all over the world.
He
There were
has
many in
nothing. He's
Ethiopia.
gonna
They were
keep
in Russia. They
repeating
were in
lies.
Poland. They were throughout Asia. Jews were all over the place, but they were still Jews. But they were still Jews.
Okay,
That's
so then
what
let
made
me
them
get to the
unique.
nub of the question, since again, a lot is at stake, a lot of money is at stake. Land is very valuable. Israel has a lot of resources. By the way, if you're accused of a crime, you can hide here. That's a pretty good passport to have. It's a good thing, right? So who's entitled to it? I don't understand, and you're very discouraged in the United States from asking this question for some reason. It's a totally rational
No, I'm not
question.
discouraged.
No, you're not discouraging me.
Yeah.
Others do. You're like the only person I can have this conversation with. Everyone will be like, shut up, Nazi. It's a foundational question. Are you speaking of an ethnic group or a religious group?
Well, I think you're looking at, for many people, it is religious. There are people who may not have a deep religious connection to Judaism, but they're still Jews.
Okay, so it's an ethnic category.
It is ethnic, but it is also religious. It is rooted in religion. You can't take it out of it. Now, that means
Then
there are
how
some
can
people,
an atheist?
well, I will tell you this. There are some people who say, I'm Christian. They never go to church. They never pray. They never read their Bible. They don't tithe.
But they're not entitled to citizenship on the basis of that.
Well,
They're
but
not
I'm saying that
entitled to.
they still call themselves Christian,
Of course.
even though they identify
Okay,
in
but
that way.
here's the difference. You're saying that people.
I think his example is faulty. So people who say that they're Jews who don't practice Judaism, they mean it ethnically. You know, while the Christians who don't pray, who don't go to the church, when they say that they're Christian, they don't mean it ethnically. They mean that by their own standards, they're still a Christian. But the Jews who say that they're not believing in God, it's by their own standards, they're atheists. They're not Jews, but they're Jews ethnically. So his example is not good. That's first. And then the second thing, he's like everything else he said about, Jews being there, and that doesn't prove anything. Okay, so they have been so the Jews some Jews have been scattered in Eastern Europe, but the question stays: how do you know these are the same Jews which are now coming here? And most of the fact they're not, or they're really diluted. So if they're like a 1% Jewish of the original people there, while the Palestinians are let's say 50%. Wouldn't that make the Palestinians have 50 times the right to be where they are, instead of somebody who comes from somebody else who's mixed with God knows what?
Who have this identification have a deed to a huge chunk of land on the Mediterranean. Okay, so there's, it's a right. You keep telling me it's a right, and so it's totally fair to say if you come to my house and say I've got the title to your house, I get to ask, may I see it? Where'd you get it? And that's exactly what happened here. People from Europe, Eastern Europe, came here, in a lot of cases atheists, and kicked out a lot of people
they
who lived
bought
here.
land.
Well, but
They
in
did not just throw people.
yeah,
they bought a lot of land. There's no
They
question
did
about
buy
that.
a lot of land.
But they
The
also
whole
in
idea of Zionist
1948
movement
kicked out a lot of people.
in the war.
It was a war. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
No, wait. This was not a. So there was a war, but those innocent people were not part of the war. They were just there minding their own business, and they did the Nakba. It's like saying that the Holocaust was a war. There was a war. There was a war. It's a whole. We had to kill. What? No, that's absolute nonsense.
I don't want to relitigate the history. I'm just saying it's a fact.
Okay.
Including a lot of Christians. A lot of Christians wound up fleeing, and they lost their homes, and they've never been allowed back. And all of this was justified on the basis of this identity that is the ticket to the right that you keep referring to. So my question is very simple. I'm going to wait patiently for an answer. Does this right derive from religious affiliation or from genetics?
And I would say it's both. But I would also say that when you said the Christians were kicked out, Tucker, Christianity is growing in Israel.
Okay, but
And there is a big lie that goes.
Did he just actually say that? Did he say Christianity is growing? This means. I mean, it is not. It's factually not. But if we assume that, does that mean that Christians love to be spat on? Is that because that's the only explanation? if Christians growing in a place where they're being spat on, the only thing that you might deduct from that they love to be spat on. So, are you admitting? Is he admitting to being a cuck? Is he admitting to being? I don't want to say any words here. It's like saying that Jews are growing in Nazi Germany. Oh my gosh, man. I'm telling you, I'm losing the brain cells here.
out there. But no, let me finish this because I keep hearing that Christians are really not treated well in Israel. That's a lie.
Well, there are lots
It
of
is a
different,
lie.
there are lots of different.
There were 34,000 Christians in Israel in 1948. There are 184,000 Christians here today.
And by Israel, what are you counting?
You talking about the land?
What territory are you counting? You're
I'm
counting
talking about
Israel proper? Or are you counting
talking about Israel
the West
proper.
Bank as well and Gaza? I mean, what do you when you say Israel? Those numbers apply to what landmass?
It would be in Israel proper.
Okay.
There are 184,000. Now, I'll tell you where Christians are not doing very well. They're not doing very well in the Muslim-controlled countries. There's almost no Christians in.
They literally were Christians in Muslim countries in Iraq and in Egypt. Literally, like in Egypt, they're 10%. In Iraq, they're a big percent. They're loved by the Shia people, dude. The Shia Arab people, they love Christians. We literally sing, we do like a poetry about Jesus, And the Christians, they celebrate their celebrations every year. We do a big Christmas tree. What is the guy talking about? He's flipping what the reality is. Absolute piece of crap.
Qatar, for example, except those who live in the Christian ghetto, who are the service workers.
I'm
You
sorry.
can't
Look,
pray.
I don't want to argue with you. There are many more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel.
That's not true.
What it actually is true, and I refer you to Wikipedia, Mr. Ambassador.
Wikipedia,
I refer you to the government of Qatar, the government of Israel. These are knowable facts. I'm
in Jordan,
by the way,
numbers are down. In Syria, the numbers are down. In
I'm
Lebanon,
just
the
saying,
numbers are down. I'm
there
just
are
telling you that
about twice as many Christians.
but they live in
hold
the
on.
enclave. They are not native Qataris.
Okay, we're mixing so many different categories
Yeah.
here. I'm just saying I get things wrong all the time. You've just gotten something wrong, and I think it's important to acknowledge it. There are many more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel. Fact.
How many?
Now you caught me. I don't know. I can look at my phone, but I was just there, and there are many more. Like whatever. But I just want to get to the point that forms the basis of this whole conversation, which is who has a right to the land.
Yeah.
And you said it's a mixture of religion and ethnicity, because as I noted, and you agree, many of the founders, maybe the majority of the founders of modern Israel, did not believe in God at all. So they were not religious Jews. They weren't religious at all. They were atheists. They said they were atheists. I believe them. So that suggests it's ethnic. But it's also true, as you well know, because there's a famous court case about this, that ethnic Jews who convert to Christianity do not have the right of return. That was settled by the Israeli Supreme Court. I'm very confused. So that would suggest it's not ethnicity, because you invalidate your Jewishness by converting to Christianity?
There are a number of Messianic Jews who live in Israel. Who are here.
I'm aware
It's
of
a
I'm aware of
significant
that
number.
But you're not contesting what I'm saying, because it's a very famous court case.
The right of return has to do with your mother, your grandmother. It has to do with family
it's
ties.
ethnic.
There is a lot of, sure, ethnicity is a big part of the right of return.
Great.
To make aliyah,
Then-
to come to Israel, to live here.
Then if I
Tucker asked him, like, okay, they're ethnically Jewish, became Christian, they're not allowed to return. Simple question. Huckabee cannot answer that because Huckabee is not a person. Huckabee is an extension of Satan. He's a limp of Satan. It's like, when you have like a sock and you pretend it's a thing. That's what Huckabee is. He's not he doesn't have a soul. He sold his soul a long time ago. He's a puppet of the devil. That's what Huckabee is. As a person, that's what he is. That's what he stands for. That's my honest belief. I believe he's a demon puppet. That's what I believe Huckabee is. He's not a person.
if both of your parents are Jewish and you have an ethnic right to the land, you are one of Abram's descendants, but you convert to Christianity, how is it you don't have the right to return? I'm totally confused.
But I know a number of people who have returned as Christians, but have Jewish history.
Are
and
you
Jewish ethnicity.
saying that Jews who convert to Christianity have a right, a legal right to return? Because
I know that they do. Whether
don't
when you say do they have a right to return,
He's
do
lying.
they prove
it's a legal category, as in any government,
which is
Certain
by
people-
their family history, their grandmother, their mother, and there are many
I understand.
aspects of that.
I've read it. I think
But
at
I
this
know
point
that
it's
these
one
are
Jewish
people who are
grandparent.
Christian, and they came here, made Aliyah. They had Jewish blood, Jewish history. They were Christian, Messianic, but they came here, and they were welcomed here.
And they were given full legal rights. here
Absolutely.
And a passport.
Yeah.
So clearly, it's not true that you invalidate your right of return by converting to Christianity. That's just false.
I'm not aware of that. I know that there are a number of Christians here. I go to church with Christians every week here.
Of course.
And
but
there's,
do you have a right to come and say, I am an ethnic Jew, even though I practice Christianity, therefore I have every bit as much right?
If that was the case, then all of Palestinians, most of them, if not all of them, would be more Jewish than the Ashkenazi Jews who came from somewhere else or even from other countries. The Palestinians are ethnically more Jewish.
To move into a settlement in the West Bank or into East Jerusalem or anywhere I want, Galilee, anywhere, because I'm returning to the land of my forefathers. I have a legal right in the state of Israel, even though I've converted to Christianity. You're saying that's true?
I'm saying I know people who've done it. Now, can I tell you what the law specifically is? I'm not sure.
Well,
because
it's really
I'm a Christian.
significant.
I don't have any Jewish roots, so therefore I cannot quote you the law. If you want me to do that, I'll look at
Well,
it.
it
up and
really
tell you.
matters because you're saying, in fact, people in the United States are being called anti-Semites, a lot of them, including me, because they somehow don't believe that Israel has a right to this land.
Do you think Israel has a right to this land?
No, you haven't defined what the land is, and you
Well,
haven't defined who
No,
Israel
I
is.
have.
So I
I've said
really don't
it
know.
It is the land they're living in now, the borders that they have.
The borders are moving. The borders have moved in the last year.
They've been moving.
What do you mean the borders have moved?
Well, they are the 1967 borders. I'm including, the
East
West.
Jerusalem and
East
Judea and
Jerusalem.
Samaria.
What are the borders of Judea and Samaria?
Well, you basically take the Jordan River, and it's west of the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, to the Lebanon border. And Israel did have control of the Sinai. They gave that to Egypt. They had control of it.
Right. No,
They gave it away in 1979 in the peace agreement.
But okay,
So
whatever you call it, the land that was taken from Jordan in 1967, you call it Judea and Samaria. There's a significance to that I don't fully understand. I'm not against it. I don't
the
really
biblical
know what it's the biblical.
terms. 80% of the Bible happened in Judea and Samaria.
But we've
That's
also
why-
established that the Bible gives Jews the right to occupy the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. So I'm very confused by why we've shrunk the land and why we're
Israel has shrunk the land. They have made that decision. That's why they gave away
So
Gaza.
now's
they gave away the
now's
Sinai.
now's the part
They've
for the
given away
real
a lot of
question.
things.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean, maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained. And so I'm very confused as to why we don't do
We
that.
would not do.
If you believe the theology that you've just explained to me.
Would we do that all over the world?
Well,
and everybody
this
would-
is the
would
only
would
country in the
Brits-
world that you've said has this covenant with God, that this people have a moral and legal right to the land.
What about
And
people who convert to Judaism? Would they have a right?
Well, you've just said.
I mean,
that
there are
it's
converts
not
to Judaism, so
you just told
they
me,
can make Aliyah. They may not have
You've just
DNA.
told me that it doesn't matter. You told me moments ago, trying to keep track.
Okay.
That it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God or whether or not you practice Torah Judaism or Rabbinic Judaism, which is something else that I don't even know if we should, I don't even know what that means. But it doesn't matter whether you're, quote, a religious Jew or not. What matters is that you are part of the Jewish people to whom God gave this land that extends from the Nile to the Euphrates. And so if you believe that, wouldn't you want to know with a burning passion who those people are? And because of science, we can now know who those people are. So why aren't we finding out?
I guess you could propose a DNA test for everybody who comes here, everybody who lives here. But the
I'm
point
comfortable with secular nation states
Yeah.
where it's none of this is done on the basis of blood. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'll just say that.
but there are people who may not have bloodlines, but who have converted to Judaism.
All right.
Are they going to be able to live here? Are you going to kick them out?
By your standards, they can't live here
No,
because
I've
you've just
never
told
said-
me
no,
that they have a right to live here because God gave them the land because they're the descendants of Abram.
They're the descendants of Abraham. But if they're the spiritual descendants of Abraham and they've now decided that they're converting to Judaism,
This is very wacky. So
then
wacky.
do they have a right to live in Israel?
Well, there's a whole legal literature in Israel on that question. And my understanding is that certain types of modern Judaism qualify a person and other types don't. Is that your understanding? I don't believe that people converted, and I could have this wrong,
Yeah.
but I know people who've faced this personally, people. I don't believe people who've converted in a Reform synagogue have the right of return. I don't think that is, because I know people who've married into Jewish families and they find out they don't have the right of return. So that is perplexing to me.
Yeah, I know, you know, my experience is a little different than yours. I know people who have definite Jewish connections, family relations, but now they're Christian. Some are not necessarily practicing Jews. They're not, they're more secular Jews, as you've discussed, but they come back here.
Okay, I'm not against that. I'm just wondering, since you began this conversation by asking me, did I think they had a right to come here?
Yeah, that's
And
what
my
Zionism
question
is.
was, on what basis do they have the right?
Yeah.
And
And
you
I've tried
said
to-
because God granted it to
Yeah,
them.
and I also said because that there should be a land where Jews can live in peace and safety.
And I asked you what a Jew.
It's all nonsensical, man. You know, like he once says it's the ethnicity, another moment he's like it's based on religion, another moment is this, another moment is that. And if it goes by ethnicity, then the Palestinians are more Jewish. If it goes by religion, many Israelis are not religious. You know, they're atheists. So it don't make sense no matter how you look at it.
Was, and you couldn't answer it. You said
I didn't
it partly is religious, but doesn't have to be. It's partly genetic, but it doesn't have to be. And so that you can see why I'm
I think I was
confused.
very clear that being Jewish is an identification either through blood or through faith that you're Jewish. It may be that you're a blood Jew, but you don't necessarily practice Judaism, just like there are people who say they're Christian, but they don't do a thing to demonstrate what Christian
There are a lot of bad Christians, including me some of the time, a lot of the time. But I don't have a right to real estate on the basis of my claim of
You
Christian.
don't have a right to real estate if you're talking about a specific parcel. But if you're talking about a land, I think what we're talking
That's
about
real
is
estate. That's all I'm,
Yeah, and-
all I'm saying.
And
So-
there was a designation to the family of nations of the world that there would be a Jewish homeland. Let's get to that point, because I think you've taken us on several trails here, and I'm not sure we can follow them all. But is there a reason that the Jewish people that represent, and I want to get back to this because you didn't let me finish a while ago, they represent 0.2% of the world's population. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total. And 8 million of them live here. The rest live mostly in New York or South Florida and a few other places.
Okay.
So this is a small population of people. They have connection to this land, historically, biblically.
This is a small population of people, like, and they're causing this much trouble. Now imagine if they're 10 times that. What? Like, he seems to be like. So is he saying that he wants them to become even more? I don't know. How can we handle this? We can't. You know, with 2%, we can't even handle it. You know. More. You know, it be an interesting place, I guess. You get more of them.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
If Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense
ancestrally-
does,
but
how do we know
ancestrally-
that? Do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
He doesn't. So no one does. That's the point. So
if
how do
there
we
is-
know that he
but
has any
if they
connection
are
to this land at
Jewish,
all?
And if there has been a practice of Judaism and a connection to the language, the
he
Bible,
doesn't-
the land,
His ancestors didn't. He doesn't practice Judaism in any rigorous way. His ancestors didn't live here. They didn't speak the language, and there's no evidence they ever lived here. So on what basis does he have a right
very
to be
much
here?
speaks the language. He has fought for the land. His family has fought for the
You're
land.
dodging a
No, I'm not
very
dodging.
obvious question, which is where does this right come from? And the
I've-
reason
I've
it's
given you
meaningful
that
is
answer.
because there are a lot of people in the territory that Israel controls today, particularly in the West
Mm-hmm.
Bank, who, through genetic testing, we can know their families have been here for thousands of years. We don't know whether they practiced Judaism, whether they were Samaritans, pre-Islam. We don't know that. A lot of them we know have been Christians for 2,000 years. They have less of a right to the land than someone whose ancestors, the only thing we know about them is they lived in Latvia or Poland. They're Eastern European. How does that work?
They're Jewish.
By what definition?
They're Jewish by their
But how do we know they have any
ethnicity.
connection
They're
to
Jewish
the
by
Jews
their
of the,
faith. They're
of the
Jewish
Bible?
by the connection to the language. Jewish by the connection to the Torah.
But how do we know that Bibi, specifically Bibi's ancestors, ever lived here? How do we know that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't? I mean,
Well, it's on the basis.
So it's like, okay, what if I go there? What if all of us right now go and claim to be ancestrally Jewish, and they ask us, well, do you know? I'm like, no, but do you? What kind of thing is that? So anybody could claim to be Jewish now, and because apparently you don't need it. You just need to declare it. Apparently, I don't know. Oh my gosh, he's just nonsense.
Of the claim that they did, that all kinds of things happen. People are displaced. There's a money flow. I mean, it's a big question. A lot hangs on this. It's not some theoretical thing like, ooh, did my grandparents do this or do that? It's like, no, we have a right to be here because my ancestors were here. Okay, how do we know they were here?
I'm totally unable to process what you're trying to get at. It goes back, do Jewish people have any land on this planet that should be theirs to
I
give
feel
them?
that way about all peoples. I feel that way about Jewish peoples. I feel that way about.
Okay, then you don't mind them having
Is
this
there
little
any
sliver of land,
country? Let me
right?
ask you this bluntly: is there any country that European peoples have a right to exclusively?
I think they have attained their land through conquest. I mean, let's ask
Have the
ourselves.
Britons
do
attained
the
their land through
Romans-
conquest? No, they've always been there.
The Romans, the Greeks, we've had all these
let's speak.
civilizations.
Let's speak. Well, you could certainly say that here. The Romans controlled this, as you know, and they expelled
But they
all the
don't
Jews
anymore.
from Jerusalem. Amen. I
Yeah.
don't want them to control it.
Hope not.
I'm anti-Roman. Okay, we're on the same page.
Okay.
But my question is very simple. Is there any European peoples that possesses the same right to their land that the Jews, including people whose ancestors lived in Eastern Europe, possess here? The Britons, we know, the British people, the Scandinavian people, the Irish people, their ancestors have been there for thousands of years. That's provable through genetic testing. Do they have a right to their land exclusively?
Is anyone saying they don't?
Yes, of course. Yes. No one will say they will. And I'm asking you, do they have that right?
And I'm not sure what that question involves, because no one is trying to force them out of their land, of their homes. But here,
Hold on.
you
Let me
have
just,
people.
why won't you answer that question?
Because I just did.
So the Irish people have the same right to their land that the
I don't know
Jews
that they have a
to.
biblical connection.
Okay.
But I'm a Bible believer.
Okay.
So that is
But it's also
important to me.
it's also a principle, and that is, and you've said it 15 times.
Sometimes people have land because they were able to attain it through war. They were able to obtain it when it was challenged.
I understand that. There's all
so-
kinds of consequences, but we
Yeah.
can't say that about the
The
Irish.
world borders
Hold on.
change all the time.
Not actually the borders of the.
So as a person who's from that region, the Middle East, we don't look. This is not how the region works. There is not like how in Europe. So the people are named after the land, not the other way around. So people who live in Iraq, I mean, there's been some migration, blah blah, but in the big parts, they are named after the land. The land grew them, not the other way around. Territory, peoples cannot kick other people outside of their land and come in and replace them. It never worked like that way. What happens is that states rule over populations, etc. And cases where something like that happens is something that is considered a crime.
Island of England have not changed, nor
but the
island of
governance
Ireland.
does.
Those are just two examples.
Yeah.
So you've got the indigenous people there. Do they have a moral right to that as their homeland?
And I think they would probably say, yes, we do, because we have ancient
What
history
do you
to it.
think?
I've never thought about whether
Now that I'm raising the question, and you've spent a lot of time thinking about the right of
Yeah.
the Jewish people to their homeland, do the Irish have the same right to a homeland?
as long as they can defend it, and as long as they,
As long as they can defend it.
But Tucker, here's the point.
Wait a
I'm
second.
telling you.
Wait, hold on. Now you just flipped category. You're the minister here.
Yeah, and I'm telling
As
you,
long as they can defend it.
and
if they can't
you're not
defend it, they
allowing
lose
me
the
to
right.
tell you that I think that what is very, very special here is that there is a biblical as well as an ethnic and a historical. So you can take any one, but if you add them all together, biblical, historical, and ethnic,
Okay.
you have a very strong case that the Jewish people are living in a land that is indigenous to them, that has been their historic homeland for 3,800 years.
You can repeat it as
And you
as
can
often
also
as
look
you
in the
want.
archaeology, the stones cry out.
Okay.
Have you been to the city of David, for example?
have. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So you know then that.
And I
when
love
you,
it.
It's an amazing place.
agree.
It may be the greatest archaeological discovery in all of history because
great.
it's stunning. And they still continue to find things that date the Jewish people to this land archaeologically for 3,800 years.
We can date the British people to their land much longer, much thousands of years longer. Stonehenge is 3,000 years older than any building built by the descendants.
It's actually not the British people. It's the Gaelic people, which are what's left of them is the Scots and the Irish people. So no, the actual English people right now came from Germany. They're Anglo-Saxons. Saxony is in Germany, and the Angles. Well, so Anglo-Saxons probably is a mix between people who lived in what is known as the UK now and Saxony. So they're part German, part from the island. But it is known that the Stonehenges, I'm pretty sure that they've been made by the Gaelic people, which for the most part have been eradicated by all the wave of Caucasians and Germanic tribes that came, and the Romans.
Of Abram in this country. And so it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's right. I'm just wanting you to affirm that right, but it makes you uncomfortable and you won't. And I don't know why.
Because I've never honestly sat down and asked myself, are the lines around the
It's an
United
island, so we know what the
Kingdom-
lines are.
I'm saying, but are those lines, are those rooted in something other than the historical connection? Well, great, then they should have it. But
And
that's
they have a
question.
right to have it. But then you said if they can defend it, and if they can't defend it, they lose the right.
But I didn't say it was exclusive one or the other. I think you're really going off the trail.
I just want to know if these principles apply universally or if they only apply to the people of Israel. And my answer
yeah.
appears to be just the people of Israel. They're the only ones with these rights, and I just reject
No,
that.
I
as a
didn't. I
Christian.
didn't say that. But I'm saying we are talking about Israel. We're in Israel. We're talking about Christian Zionism because you've made some disparaging statements about Christian Zionists. You've apologized for them, for which I appreciate. And now we're trying to define Christian and Zionist. And it seems like we've gone way, way off
I'm
of
trying
that.
to get, as you suggested as a former debater at the outset, I'm trying to get to terms and a common
Right.
understanding of what the words mean.
And the term
And I'm
Christian,
no closer to that than I was when I began.
you're not closer to the term Christian, what that means?
I think it's someone who follows Jesus. And that's
Okay.
my next question.
All
There are
right.
a lot of Christians in the West Bank, and there were a fair amount of Christians in Gaza, and some of them have been killed.
There were 5,000 in Gaza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And two different churches were hit by the IDF. Christian Hospital was hit 7 times by the IDF. And I don't understand.
They were not hit 7 times. There were different, I know. And one of the times it was a rocket that was shot by Hamas. And all the news agencies reported that the IDF shot the rocket. They
Did
said
the
there were-
IDF ever hit the hospital or the churches?
they did.
Why?
Accidentally, and they apologized for it.
So they did that 7 times, at least 6 times, according to this guy, accidentally. You know, can you imagine if somebody comes to you and punches you in the face 6 times, and but oops, it's an accident. It's 6 times on that, dude. It's nonsense.
And it was very unfortunate. But they also,
boom,
you've got to remember, there were times
Kill the hell out of
Hamas
you.
often hid.
Shoot people in the head, shoot old grandma, like, oh, it's an accident. Shoot, tremendous, just shooting people, kids in the head, shooting their limbs. You know, like, oh, I couldn't tell that was a kid. Couldn't tell that was a grandma. No, this is, it's so delusional. Again, I hope that I maintain some amount of brain cells after this.
Ashes of arms under hospitals.
Were you bothered
under-
by the fact that the IDF hit Christians?
I'm bothered that anyone got killed in Gaza, but you know why I'm bothered?
You're a Christian
because
minister.
here's the
and
thing.
You can't say that the Christians are Islamic extremists.
No, but I
and
can say that
I
the
would expect
reason
you
that
to side with the Christians over the secular government of Israel.
But
you
I
don't
would
seem
look
to.
at it even more broadly. I would ask you this. Why was there so much suffering and continues to be suffering in Gaza? It's because Hamas, which could have built a Singapore, built a Haiti. They have a landmass the size of Las Vegas. They built
What are you talking about? Gaza is filled with refugees from Palestine, where Israel occupied. It's been sanctioned, cut out from the world since forever, literally for existing. And you want them to basically leave with the right to go back to their homes. This is demonic, man. This is just so. This is a level of evil. To say that with a straight face in the name of religion, in the name of God, with a straight face like that. I would not look. If I saw this guy on the street, I don't want to be near them. Even if they pay me, to be in the same room of this person, Mike Huckabee, I would not do it. It's too bad for my soul, man. You know, no amount of money would be worth the damage to your soul by sitting with this guy. This is not just your average bad guy. This is a person who is fully possessed, in my opinion. This is what I believe. Tucker Carlson is weird at best. You know, I'm glad that at least he is exposing the truth. You know, I know what's in his heart, and I hope what's in his heart is good, but yeah, I wouldn't be able to sit with a guy like that or be near him at all. Not that, you know, that I'm invited or anything, but I'm just saying, you know. I don't want to be anywhere near this guy, you know. And I don't want to be like him, you know, because some people say, oh, you know, but you need to be all successful in life. But if success gets you there, to hell with success, man. I don't want your success. Screw your success. This guy is rotten.
built tunnels underneath that are larger than the London Underground, over 500 miles of tunnels.
yeah.
They didn't build it to move.
They would need to defend themselves. What the heck you expect? So they don't have an army. They don't have anything. They barely have anything. And you're not letting them have enough food. You're putting them on calorie surplus. And how dare they have tunnels? Excuse me? You have nukes. You have nukes. You have all kind of planes spending. You have infinite weaponry and support. Infinite military support. And how dare they, bunch of like people who barely have shoes, build tunnels? Excuse me. What are you talking about? So you want to have all the weapons and you want them to have no weapons, and that's your view of it? No. Go F yourself.
People from one hospital to the other, one marketplace to the other, but to hide terrorists, to hide weaponry. And on October the 7th, they went over there and they massacred 1,200 civilians. Massacred, mutilated.
Mostly massacred by the IDF, as we have been, you know. So they brought all the helicopters and shot a lot of people because they don't want them to be taken as hostages.
Humiliated them,
You're never going to get me to defend Hamas. Sorry.
Please don't.
I'm not going to.
But I'm
ever.
telling you. And
I'm
so-
appalled by it. How many civilians have been killed by the IDF in Gaza?
We don't know. You know
What's
why
your
we don't
guess?
know?
What's your guess?
It's big. It's a big number, mostly women and children. Very big number. It's more than 10%. It's more. I'm pretty sure it's more than 10% of the population, which is a huge number. You know, to put that into perspective, you know, that's like, imagine. I don't know. It's hard to put into even an imagination, but it's a huge number, and it's a big. It's a you know, it's a word that YouTube does not like. Starts with G and ends with E.
Well, the only numbers we have come from this dubious entity called the Gaza Health Ministry. You know who that is?
Well, why
it's
doesn't
Hamas.
Israel have some kind of count on it?
We also know that a lot of the people who were killed were, in fact, warriors. Sadly,
How many kids were killed?
we don't know.
What's your guess?
I don't know. I'm sure it was thousands, and it's thousands
Thousands
too many.
of kids were killed.
Some of the kids who were killed had been recruited to be in the military. Kids as young as 14
they were
years
terror
old.
Kids. Do you hear yourself? I wonder.
I just said that there were kids as young as 14 that were recruited to be Hamas soldiers who were given arms.
How do you
It's a
feel about the
horrible-
kids being killed?
I think it's horrible. You know what I also think is horrible? I think it's horrible that 1,200 people were slaughtered by
couldn't agree
people
more.
across the
couldn't-
border,
I
and
couldn't agree more.
252 people were taken hostage. 48 of the 1,200 were Americans.
Agree more.
And then when
Are all lives equal?
When Hamas could have ended this on October the 8th and given all the hostages up, they didn't, leaving no choice.
You're never going to get me to defend Hamas.
I hope
I'm
not.
not pro-Hamas. I'm
I hope
totally
not.
opposed to slaughtering innocents,
Yeah.
whether Hamas does it or whether the government of Israel does it in much larger numbers. And the reason I'm opposed to it is because I'm a Christian and I believe that all souls are created by God.
I do not disagree with that wholeheartedly.
But I said, how many children have been
war is a
killed?
horrible thing, period. And we don't know. We know that a lot of the numbers
Dude,
were.
if the same amount of people were killed on the Israeli side, he would not be sitting here and doing it. Like, war is a horrible thing. A lot of people die. Oh yeah, but it's fine. It's just talk when they're from the other side. When it's from the Israeli side, then it's whole, you know, 100K people die on the Gaza side, and war is horrible. 1,200 people die, most of them killed by your own, and you're like, oh my gosh, let's do a god dang just whole and annihilation of those poor people. Kill the children, you know, all of these freaking rabbis.
Reported
But
by
you said you
Hamas,
think thousands
a
of
lot
children
the
have
ki-
been killed.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know why they got killed? Because Hamas would gather up the children and put them in the.
Dude, I gotta go for just a bit, you know, it's kind of tiring a little bit as well, but, you know, I'll keep going at it. Here, where's the thing? Alright, I guess let's just make it part 1 and part 2. It's, nobody even watches this, I'm just making them for nothing, but, you know, I already do this in my free time, so I said, you know, why don't put a camera there and talk to somebody, right? So instead of talking to myself, instead of talking to people in my mind, I talk to an actual camera. So, you know, I enjoy doing this. So I'm tired of this guy, man. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make a part 2, but if you guys really want a part 2, just let me know. But yeah, you know, he's a piece of crap. Look at him. Look at his nasty lips. You know, all right. You guys stay strong and don't budge.